The New Jersey Edmentum Partnership Team in particular has been listening and collecting questions and has put together a small panel of educators for you today to give their thoughts on some of the most pressing questions. Our panel participants today, Dina Feldman, District Supervisor, Edison Township Public Schools, Michael Ballone, Director of Curriculum and Instruction, Marlborough Township Public Schools. We thank them both for being here today. And your New Jersey Edmentum Partnership Team, Sheila Miller, Partnership Manager, North New Jersey, Lindsay Foglio, Partnership Manager, South Central New Jersey, David Hanslick, Partnership Manager, and Matt Ferry, Partnership Manager, New Jersey, and me, the host, David Cicero. Before we get started, just a housekeeping item here. Everyone is currently on mute. You are more than welcome to ask questions in the chat box. It's being monitored, and we'll bring some of those to light along the way. If you'd like to contribute to the discussion and come off of mute, just let us know. You can put that in the chat box as well. The webinar will be recorded, and recordings will be sent to each attendee. And finally, we're going to leave a little bit of buffer at the end for question and answer. Okay. So we're going to jump right in to our first question. And let me just make sure that our panel participants can hear me. Dina and Michael, can you hear me okay? You might be on mute.
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Michael, I can hear you. Dina, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you as well.
Fantastic. Thank you both for being here. We're going to go Dina, then Michael on these questions. So let's jump right in. So question number one, how has the school parent and teacher parent relationship changed? How are you continuing to support parents? Dina, what are your thoughts on this?
So I think there's a few different layers with this one. The school parent, teacher parent relationship, I think they're going to have a different appreciation for what we do, having their children home all day with them, and also trying to help them with their schoolwork. So I think they're seeing educators in a different light first. The other thing is that they're relying heavily on us to kind of share what we're doing with them, as well as communicate so they can understand, because most parents, we're very busy. We are, working. So now we're trying to do two roles. Even myself, I'm waiting for my daughter to kind of end up in this room in a few minutes because she didn't take a nap today, right? That's our realities right now. So I think that, parents and teachers and parents and administrators are just really communicating a lot more, probably more than they ever have. And I think that the continuing support of parents is sending them updates. Being a district supervisor, our principals are amazing. They send out, some do a daily shout out to the parents to let them know what's going on. Some do weekly. So I think it just depends on what the community needs. So that's, gonna vary based on that.
Absolutely. And I'm a former teacher as well, former high school math teacher. And in my experience, in many cases, in some cases, it was kind of difficult, to get parents involved somehow. Have you seen an uptick in that? Or are you finding parents that may, previously not been so eager to be involved, now they're looking for support?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think there's a few layers to that. First, it's with the technology. Understanding, how kids get access, how they get on the devices. We're fortunate enough that most, with the exception of a one grade level, we're one-to-one, and we have been for 6 years, I believe now. So for us, it was just send the devices home with the kids and then, support them that way. But I think a lot of it has to do first with how do they get access to the instructional materials? How do they get access to the teacher? That's the first piece. Now they want to know, how can I help my child?
Sure.
As we move into the third week of this, at least for us, it's third week.
Yeah, fantastic. Michael, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what Dina had shared. We're going out to our community on a daily basis with an update. Of course, our principals communicate with the families, but really from our superintendent's level, what we do not quite every day, but almost every day, at least every other day, as the admin team gets together and we discuss some of the challenges, some of the big ticket items that are coming down the pike. And then we document all of that with a running agenda. We just use Google, a very simple running agenda. And then that informs our superintendent's daily communication out to the parents. So he'll go out at the end of the day, somewhere, 3, 4 o'clock, and just sort of, give an update for each day. So, this afternoon, he'll give his April 1st update. And some of the big items that are either being asked of parents at the building level, or even sometimes even at the association level, the union level, with things like grades or marking periods and all of those sorts of things, observations that we're all dealing with right now, those types of questions. He'll go out if it's an appropriate topic to discuss with the community, like grades and marking periods, then he'll certainly do that. And then if there are other items related, more like on the staff end, like observations, then he also goes out to the staff with a daily update as well. Tries to keep it light as well. He has a little contest every day. He'll put out music lyrics or a quote from a book or a quote from a movie, and then the first staff member to answer him. He has promised them a gift. I'm not quite sure what that gift is yet, but he said, when we return, you'll get your gift. And I'm kind of wondering, are we going to return? So at least this year. So, keeps it light in that sense, but also I think touch points on a regular basis every day. People are appreciating it. We're getting just an overwhelmingly positive response from our community. And, sometimes that's not always what you get when you're an administrator, right? A lot of people like to point out things that you're not doing right. But we've really had a very positive response to how we've communicated with them and kept them updated.
That's a lot of great, interesting points. And we're going to have a question later about, what in education might we see change moving forward. And it's starting to look like to me that, the community's perception of what service our public institutions provide and the roles of educators might be changing in their eyes. And so it's really great to hear. Thank you so much for sharing. So we're going to go on to question number 2. And so Dina, what was your initial learning focus? Did you break it down this way? Did you think to yourself, or do we want to fill gaps? Do we want to reinforce what's been taught? Do we want to focus on students of enrichment? What was your initial focus to instruction, and has it changed since the first day that was decided?
Yes. So we started with just thinking about, reinforcing what we've already learned, because we weren't sure, 1, how long this was going to be, and 2, how can we present new material to students? Our curriculums have changed. It's not the teacher standing up there, giving students information. It's kids really investigating, kids really being hands-on. So how do you do that in a digital format? How do you do that in a distance format? So first let's just focus on keeping some consistency with the children, giving them some, work so that they have a somewhat normal day. And then as we've gone into this, we've really focused on now, how can we do lessons? How can we connect with our kids? That's one of the biggest things we're really focusing on, is connecting with kids, because, they need that interaction. So, we have a great staff development team that has been working with teachers and doing virtual PD sessions on how to use Zoom or how to use Google Meet, Screencastify to create lessons. Again, I think being a digital district for so long, some of the teachers are very comfortable. Some of the teachers aren't with that. We now at this point, we have teachers that are doing virtual meetings with kids on a regular basis. We have our intervention team, our gifted and talented team, so both ends, remediation and enrichment, supporting kids as well. So as we get deeper into this, our focus has changed. And we reevaluate that every day, because we're like, well, we don't know when we're going to go back if we do this year. So we want to make it, valuable learning experiences for our kids in the best environment that we can.
Absolutely. And you mentioned something a moment ago, is connecting with students. And are you doing that? Do you see like synchronous activities as a way to connect with students? Either it's a phone call or a live Zoom meeting or a live collaboration space. Does that sound close to what is on your mind? Yeah.
Yeah. Some of the, again, it varies on teacher comfort, on, student support at home for some of this as well, because there are some kids do need the support to be able to do this, especially our younger kids. But most of the teachers, whether they're doing like a morning meeting with the kids as a group, they'll record it. So maybe if a child can't attend, they can send it to them. Some of them are just doing quick check-ins, a few meetings. Some are doing, the virtual book clubs, or they're using like another platform like Flipgrid to interact, just so that kids see each other and have that daily interaction in some way.
Fantastic. Michael, your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so the first days that we were out, our last day in district was Friday the 13th, believe it or not. We started Monday the 16th with technically a snow day, and then we started on St. Patrick's Day with virtual learning. And at that point, it was asynchronous, right? Teachers were just sort of getting on. They were at that point using Google Hangouts. Because we are a Google district, that's what they knew. As Zoom became readily available, they switched over. A lot of them have switched over to using Zoom, just because it was just less glitchy. A few more tools, seemed a little easier to use. So I'd say the majority of them have switched over to that now. As an admin team, we discussed the reality of being out for the long haul, right? So at first it was, well, maybe it'll be a few weeks. Now reality has set in, and it's going to be our new normal. So with that said, we wanted to ensure that we had a shift in what the instruction looked like, and what we decided to do, and we haven't rolled it out yet because we're coming up on spring break. So next week, April 8th, is our last day in school, quote unquote. So that is our last instructional day before spring break. We will go on spring break. The plan is not to forego spring break. I think everyone needs a break, teachers and students. So we are holding our spring break as scheduled. When we come back on April 20th, and we're actually going out to our staff in a formal way on Friday. So hopefully this doesn't air much before that. But the plan right now is to do synchronous learning for at least 2 days a week. So meaning, obviously on some sort of schedule, teachers will meet with students real time via Zoom or Google Hangouts, depending on what they're more comfortable with. Seems like we're erring on the side of Zoom because we're dealing with some other issues with Hangouts where students can actually rejoin into that Hangout after a teacher leaves, and put middle school students into that recipe, and I think enough is said there. So we don't want any of that happening. So I Zoom has a little more capability in terms of locking them out for things like that. But so it has shifted. It will shift to synchronous days, at least 2 days a week for our core subjects, and our core subjects include ELA, math, science, and social studies. The other classes like related arts will continue what they're doing and posting work on their web pages and or Google Classroom.
Yeah, I recently had given this idea some thought, this synchronous versus asynchronous. And when we take courses online, college courses, master's courses, right, or bachelor's or master's courses, there's synchronous and there's asynchronous. It takes on it's a different animal when you're thinking about high school students, middle school students, younger students. What is it useful for? And I had this idea, that those synchronous days or those synchronous events, they're live learning events. It's a great way, and you tell me if you kind of had the same thought. It's a great way to get kids online when you're online, right? That's huge. I also had the idea that, in thinking about how to track attendance, do they show, do they not? So I'm curious about this attendance idea, Michael. How do those synchronous, will you be tracking attendance on those synchronous events plus, work completed? I mean, just if you could just address that really quickly.
Yeah, so the attendance piece, we aren't really looking at that in the traditional way where, you go into Genesis or your SIS, whichever SIS you use, and, like Mark said, the student was here, the student was not there. Students under code right now, under the 10.1 code, under home instruction, if they are home, they're present. So we're kind of operating under that circumstance. If students are turning work in, then they're present, but we're not formally going in and marking them present or absent in our student information system. If we have students who are not completing work, which, we have now, and we had that when we were in school, it's addressed at the classroom level and or the principal level if that needs to happen, and a communication with the parent.
Hey, Michael.
Yes.
Sorry, a few people are having some issues hearing you. You're a little low. Is there any way you could?
So I can sit closer. I don't know that.
That makes a difference. It's going to be awkward, but yeah.
Is that better? You can see my big head now. Much better?
Much better, yes.
Okay. So I was just saying we're not using a traditional, attendance procedure in our student information system. We're dealing with it using 10.1 home instruction. They are home. They are present. They're turning in work. When they don't turn in work, we address it the same way we would when they don't turn in work when we're in school. So, but we are not taking formal attendance through our student information system and then, filing truancy charges when they're not showing up. We're not doing that.
Sure.
Can I jump in?
Yep.
Just because we have a
Lindsay?
few questions.
Sure.
A lot of people are mentioning the security issue when it comes to Zoom and synchronous meetings. So is there any way that you, Michael and Dina, have addressed that?
Well, I think like what I had said in the chat now that they have, setting up passwords. So the kids have to put in a password so it's protected to come in. So only kids that have that, enabling a waiting room. So you are allowing the people that you want into your new classroom. We have felt has helped. And that's what we share. Our chief technology officer shares updates daily, anything that Zoom, has put out, because I think there was a big issue with that. What were they calling Zoom bombing or something? I think it was called. And they had come out and turned around pretty quickly to try to, alleviate that.
We're doing much the same. We have updates from our tech supervisor, utilization of waiting room, and then kind of locking. I think there's a feature where you can lock anyone else out from coming in. And then the ability when you end the meeting, if you're the host, you can end the meeting for all, or you can just leave the meeting. So that is not a feature in Google Hangouts, which, again, as I mentioned before, we find could potentially be problematic.
And Dan actually had a really good question too, which Dan, we're going to be touching on this in a little bit, but he asked if anyone is having issues with dealing with students with special needs and meeting their needs in the distance learning situation.
Any student that requires some type of assistance with learning, it's going to be different when they're used to having a teacher maybe sit with them, redirect, maybe provide alternative resources for them to use. So I think that's where the technology can really come into play to give them things where they can be successful independently at first. I know some of our teachers
Thank you, Michael. Anything
Yeah,
else?
so from our end, our special ed director and supervisor have really put together what I believe to be a very good plan. So for our least restrictive environments, like your ICR class, ICR students, those students, when we have synchronous days, those ICR teachers will be pushing into those classes. So that'll be at least twice a week. They're also pulling small group with those students in addition. Students who have more needs than an ICR student, let's say your autism class, your LLD or MD class, teachers are scheduling small group sessions with those students at least twice a week. Again, a lot of this material, they're providing material to parents as well, especially for a student with autism. It becomes a little more difficult, a lot more difficult to have those virtual touches and actually be successful. What we're doing in those cases, if services are not able to be delivered to those students, we're going to make up those services most likely at the extended school year program, and those students are in that program anyway. So we're making sure we make up those sessions to make sure we comply with the student's IEP. So that's how we're handling those pieces.
All right, yeah. And then Jean just said her biggest issue is also just having a child has difficulty sitting still. I mean, these are issues that are going to come up, and it's going to be hard to tackle with the virtual learning.
If I may really quickly,
yeah.
inside of the classroom, I have to pretty much have someone sit with him at all times. So now at home, when we're on screen and he's literally doing flips off the couch and he's got his toys and he's swinging a sword around and unmuting his microphone just to say whatever is on his mind, it's hard because you lose that control. In Zoom, I could at least mute him, but on Google Meets, I don't have that ability. I don't know where it went, but so how did any of you guys deal with something like that? The parents are home, so they see it happening, I think. So that's where my question is, like, how do you handle, and this is kindergarten, by the way. So any tips on that?
I mean, I know some of our teachers in situations where kids maybe have that attention piece or need that additional support, they are doing one-on-one meetings with them. That's one option I know. Also reaching out to the parent and kind of saying, this is the role that we play in the classroom with your child to help them stay, focused within the lesson if there's a way that they can. I know, we're all trying to work and help our own kids too, so it's difficult because parents are also doing the same thing. But those are some of the things that I've heard that our teachers have been doing and finding success. Keeping it very short, obviously, too, in kindergarten, maybe only doing a 10-minute lesson instead of what they were planning to do half an hour or whatever it was.
Jean, do you have an ICR teacher in there or anyone additional who would normally be in that classroom?
Normally we have a teacher's aide. So, and I think, his parents are working and he has an older brother. The older brother comes in and then he distracts him, and it's, and you can't kick a 5-year-old out of a Zoom meeting, so that's kind of, that's where it's hard is to just get him to stop.
Yeah,
which even in the classroom, it was a constant, like I actually had him have to go out and take walks, you know what I mean? Yeah. But in this situation, and the hardest part too is, he doesn't struggle academically, but because of his constant moving and shaking around, the other kids, they're paying attention to what's he doing? That's so funny back there right now, and that's where it gets hard. And I could do one-on-one, but I don't know. I mean, I'll try it and see if he benefits, but to also tell him like, hey, but then you can't come to our morning meeting. It's kind of, I don't want him to feel unincluded, not included.
And Jean, also check out the chat because people, are suggesting some ways to help as well. Yeah. Thank you so much. And I love this collaboration, by the way. Like, this makes me very happy. Like, I want everyone, chime in, chat in. But Dave, you want to get to the next question because we're already a half hour in.
Yep. So let's jump to question number 3 here. And we already kind of covered this a little bit. I think we can kind of recontextualize this question. So the question is, what does teacher-student communication look like? I know, Dina, you mentioned communication has increased. We want to stay more connected. Michael, you mentioned that you'll be coming back from spring break and doing at least 2 synchronous, learning events a week. So I think for this question, what I really want to ask is, do you have in place, or are you thinking about putting in place some minimum number of touch points per week per student? Dina, what are your thoughts on that?
So we do now that we ask that our teachers do check in at least daily with each student in their class. That's at the elementary level. That's what I work with. So I don't know what they're doing in the middle and the high school. Obviously with 100 and something students, it's probably not possible. But at the elementary level, we do ask that they're checking in some form of communication, whether that be through a video chat, through a recording, through a Flipgrid, through a comment on a Google Doc, that they touched base some way with that child. As far as schedules, check-ins, and office hours, we're flexible because, one, we know that our teachers are now supporting their own children at home. So we don't have, like, you have to work from 9 to 12 or from 12 to 4. We're pretty flexible with that as long as you're putting in 4 hours. I believe that is the amount of time that we would like to see. I can tell you most of our teachers, as sure as all of you are probably working like 20 hours a day, just because we're at home and we're trying to get everything done. So we do say get office hours because parents are reaching out when it's convenient for them. So we don't want you to always be on and responding to emails on a revolving basis. So we do say, if you're telling parents you have questions or your children have questions, these are the times I'm going to be available and things like that, just so it's consistent and they know. And that you're also not working, like I said, more 20 hours a day.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Nice. And Michael, coming back from spring break, you've got those synchronous activities. What else is built around that in terms of communication between teacher and student?
Yeah, so we took a different approach than Edison took. We put all of the entire district on a 9 to 1 schedule. In essence, obviously, communicating back and forth doesn't have to be synchronous. It could be videos, could be content posted into Google Classroom, but they are on call basically from 9 to 1. That's when a parent could reach out. That's when a student could reach out, and they're expected to get back to that parent or student, within that time frame. Outside of that time frame, we, while they're still getting, their full salary, they're on a 7-hour a day contract. So they essentially have 3 hours each day to prepare for the next day or week or whatever that case may be. To Dina's point, I think they're working a lot more than 7 hours, and we do appreciate that. They've really risen to this occasion, and we're not hearing complaints at all. Really not, and that's really a testament of what they really can do in a situation that they're forced into. So we do appreciate that from our staff, and but we did put them on a 9 to 1 structure.
Okay, I love the difference, right? Because some things work for certain teacher and student populations and communities, and other things work, for the other. And so I think it's very interesting to hear both perspectives that seem to also be working in your respective communities. I think those are some solid takeaways. Just the idea that we can respond to what works best for our people. I'm going to jump through question 4 because I think that we kind of did already kind of discuss this. So I'm just, go ahead, Lindsay. Yeah.
Sorry. I never know when is a good time to jump in. But I just wanted to say, check out Marina's post in the chat. She had some really good suggestions for that question as well.
Okay. Fantastic.
Yeah. I just want everyone to make sure that they're checking out the chat because there's some really good stuff in there.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you all so much for participating. This is, question number 5 here is just, this could be anything. It could be anything. It could just be, wow, the school culture we put in place is really, really coming to, we're really seeing it now that we're all, in this new environment, or, curriculum instruction is really taking off, or, we're really connecting with parents. Dina, what would you just say? What is working well overall?
I think our like we've been talking about, the teachers and everything amazing that they're doing, they want to create some sense of normalcy for kids in an unstable, unprecedented time. Just trying to make those connections. I wish I could say one specific thing. I feel like that the teachers are working just so hard and doing things like really well. I think our communication, even mine of teachers, when I have 500 and something elementary teachers, and yes, I know some of them, some I don't know very well. I think our connections as a community as a whole have gotten really strong. You're seeing people on a more personal level. Like I said, my child jumps in, and my husband walks past the screen, and they're like, oh, Dina's at her house, or they have your phone number, which they've always had my phone number, but they're using it more because they have a question about something, or something's not working, and they want to fix it right then and there because the kids, are working on things as well. So I think maybe just bringing, the community together, and the communication and connecting people maybe that weren't connected as well before.
Yeah. And the passion of a teacher, where regardless it's virtual, if there's a crisis, if things are going normal, we're still teachers. We still care about our kids, and it's just adjusting. It's just adjusting and still finding success any way it can be found. And I love this idea that, your kid could walk. I have a 4-year-old too. At any moment, he could bust through that door right there. Or my cat is sticking her arm under the door, making way more noise than you think she should be making, just scratching a door. But this is the realities of life, and we're all just taking it as it comes, and still just trying to help each other. Michael, what's working well, you think?
So just to your point there, I've got a 7-year-old and a 9-year-old. They're just out of your sight, but they're well within my sight and my earshot. So I apologize if you hear any background noise. Of course, I'm in the basement, and they found their way down here. But what's working really well for us is every staff member who obviously is paid by the district has a role, and they're fulfilling that role to the extent that they did and above what they did when we were in school. Our bus drivers are delivering free and reduced lunch to homes for our students who are on free and reduced lunch. Although we don't have a ton, we've got 5,000 kids in the district and just under 300 who are free and reduced. So our bus drivers are rotating schedules and making those deliveries. Our food service provider is putting all of the food together. Just this week, actually starting yesterday, and this is more in my BA's wheelhouse, but apparently there's a state reimbursement for meals now. So I don't know if anyone's aware of this. And again, I can't speak to the specifics. It's more of the BA, but there's a state reimbursement where all students, you don't have to just be free and reduced now, are eligible to receive lunch from the school. So we are now feeding as many students as want to come out and get a free lunch, even if they're not on free and reduced. We require them to sign up and actually come out and pick up that lunch versus the delivery that we're continuing for our free and reduced children. But every child now in the district has the ability to show up at a middle school as long as they told us they're coming, so we can prepare for it. And they can pick up a free lunch. So things like that going really well. I think it's really important, I think for this whole group here listening, we need to leave survival mode in the rear view, and we need to continue the great things that our districts are doing and were doing before we left. One thing, we had a district initiative around mental health, and then we had a lot of different subcommittees And two of those subcommittees I'm chairing. One is the kindness subcommittee, and the other one is what we call responsive community, but it's very similar to responsive classroom. I virtually met with those two subcommittees last week, and we're continuing the work that we would have done had we been in the district. So I put that out there just to kind of keep it on all of our, the forefront of all of our minds. Let's not forget about all of those good things that, we had planned to do or currently are doing in our districts. Let's not just continue to play survival mode. We're in this for the long haul. So we have to get out of survival mode and continue pushing forward with all of those things that we were doing, whatever it may look like in your district.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely a great message, and settle in and continue to provide those meaningful services and learning experiences. Thank you, Michael, for that. I'm going to jump to our next question here. Question number 6.
I know that we're about to have some
Go ahead.
questions as well. We're just waiting on those questions to pop up.
Okay, we can do that. Yep.
But in the meantime, there was a question that came up earlier for everyone. Hold on, I just have to find it. Everyone's been chatting in this chat, and I actually super appreciate it, but I have to scroll up. Okay, so Linda wanted to know, she wants to ask how many of you had teachers providing live instruction, not just support via an online platform?
Can you repeat that again, Lindsay? I'm sorry, I missed that. What was the question?
Hold on, I scroll back down. How many of you have teachers providing live instruction, not just support via an online platform?
I think for us, there's a few of them that are. Out of, I would say probably a good percentage. It's not required that they're doing it yet. The goal right now is just to kind of connect with the kids first. But there are a lot of teachers that are, like I said, doing book clubs or a math lesson, having, discussion around a topic that they were, doing before.
And I'd say for us, while not required, we have a lot. I can't put my finger on the number. A lot are doing it. I'm seeing it on social media. I'm seeing it in a lot of different places. Principals who I meet with every morning, they're saying, teachers are already doing that. So after spring break, as I said, they will be required for 2 days to do that. My feeling is I think the majority of them will say, well, we're already doing that, so it's not going to be such a big deal. But yeah, once spring break is over and we return, it'll be that twice a week required.
Okay, and thank you, Michael. And we have 2 other questions that I think is great from Hina, and I apologize if that is not how you pronounce your first name, so let me know if I'm wrong. But it would just be helpful to know, when speaking to parents, how are you directing them to see what their child is missing? Because so many of them are working, and a lot of them are, health workers, that they're not able to help their children. So what have you been suggesting when speaking with parents?
I think from our perspective, it depends on the platform that the teachers are using. Most of our 2 through 5 teachers are using a Google Classroom, so they can invite parents. We also have our schools-based remote learning sites where teachers put their daily plan up there. So they'll say, today read a story, answer these questions on Google Classroom. So, and that's what the parents have access to if they're not in, as a viewer in the Google Classroom or the Seesaw account. So we shared that with parents when we first went to this structure. And parents, that's updated regularly. Whether the teachers put it out daily or 5 days at a time, that's up to them. So parents know, and that's the communication that we as a district and each school gave to parents.
So from our perspective, I think this is a great, not that, Edmentum's paying me for the plug here, but I think, so we spend approximately $377,000 a year on digital tools. And I say that somewhat jokingly because I get pushed on it every year from my board. But with that said, I think parents need they need an easy spot to go with minimal information or minimal kind of interaction between them and kind of reading through a pacing guide or trying to look at different types of activities. So what we try to do, all of our students know how to use our digital tools. All of our staff members know. And I'd be happy, I think I'll link it into the chat here. We've created what we call cheat sheets for every single one of our digital tools. And we've actually opened that up to anyone who wants access to it. Before they're all in Google, and they were sort of locked down to our district. But in these times, we felt like we really want to share it out. So I will share it out. It's actually on our webpage, but to help you from digging through that, I'll put a link in the chat when I'm finished speaking here, because I'm not great at multitasking speaking and finding things. But I think, directing our parents to our digital tools, which are linked to our standards and skills that we're teaching. So, to complete the necessarily the reading assignment or the math assignment as the teacher assigned it is not necessarily as important as the skill or standard we're trying to teach. So if we can point a parent to, hey, you know what, if you're using ExactPath and you have your learning path already, laid out for you, have your child complete this activity. And at that point, the child knows what to do. The child knows how to log in. They know how to, get through the program and ultimately meet those skills or standards. So we are not, emphasizing the task at hand. We're emphasizing the skill and standard to be learned. And we're, in the event that we have an issue like that, we can point parents to, some of the parents, you can just say, hey, have your child go through his or her learning path on Edmentum, or, have them, here's a standard, and you can use this other digital tool to kind of meet that standard. So what, however that looks, and if it's as easy as possible for the parent, that's kind of the approach that we're taking.
Awesome, thank you. And then a really good question also, how are you guys doing grading? Are you doing pass-fail? Are you doing a traditional grading right now? What are you doing in both Edison and Marlboro?
So we actually, for the third marking period, which I believe just ended or is ending, we just kind of came up with a rubric assessing two areas. Like we just worked on it this morning. I wish I could remember. And I don't mind sharing it. And that's just for the K-5. I think it was collaboration was one area, and the other one was completing work assignments. And we just had, meeting, developing, approaching, and then not doing it at all. And then just had some descriptors there. That's what we're doing for this ending of this marking period. For fourth marking period, we'll revisit and maybe make it a little bit more specific. So that's what we're doing.
So what we've decided to do is a big topic of conversation. What we've decided to do is merge marking periods 3 and 4 into one big marking period. What we require of our staff is by grade level and by subject, we require them, we call them buckets, to have a minimum number of items in a bucket. So there's a test bucket, there's a quiz bucket, there's a homework bucket, some supplemental activity buckets, and we want to make sure that students have the minimum number of items in those buckets, so we have somewhat of a decent representation of a grade book. Because otherwise, if you don't have that, you could have a teacher who gives 10 tests worth 40% of the grade, and a teacher who gives 2 tests worth the same amount. And if the student doesn't do well on those 2 tests versus the one who had 10 different chances to affect 40% of his grade, there's an inequity there. So we create sort of a minimum number of buckets, knowing full well that we were basically 2 weeks away from the third marking period finishing. Most buckets were not fully filled, but they were just about filled, probably 80% filled. And knowing we didn't want to provide a grade with just 80% of the buckets filled, we figured merging marking periods 3 and 4 into one, we would make sure all the buckets were filled, and then virtual learning assignments obviously would be graded a little differently, and we are having conversations now about what those look like. You know, you don't want to give a math test where the student can go on Khan Academy or go, you know, use another online, you know, some online source to find answers and get a 100 on the algebra test or whatever it might be. So I think it's also creating the conversation for teachers to create assessments that, you know, you can't Google answers for. So maybe, you know, it's more project-based type work where students actually have to engage in the work, but still meet the skills, still meet the standard, but not be able to look the answer up. So those, I think those are conversations that are happening now, and you know, doing those two things will be able to have a representative grade book, and then also have teachers think differently about the types of assessments they're giving.
Awesome. And just so you know, Michael, Holly Foley gave you a little shout out because she lives in Marlboro, and she says you're doing a great job.
Awesome. Thank you.
And then if you want to check out the chat, Michael also did put the digital tools cheat sheet that he has in his Google Doc.
Yeah, take those, make them your own, use them how they are. You know, you can certainly do what you want with them, but they're, you know, every digital tool we have in the district is listed there, and I think it's very useful even for on-demand PD for staff.
Awesome. And then everyone also make sure you're checking out the chat. Like I said, everyone's giving great examples of what they're doing in their district. I'm going to jump in and ask question number 6, actually. So I might know my voice is not as soothing as Dave's, but I will kick it off anyway. So how are you working to ensure equitable access to your online learning curriculum?
So,
topic right now.
So our tech team has been working probably 24 hours, 7 days a week since we have transitioned, making sure that if students didn't take a device home, that they were able to pick it up, or do we have to drop it off, providing time that if a device wasn't working, they can come to one of the locations that was convenient for them, scheduling an appointment, you know, making sure everybody's still staying safe. If needed hotspots, providing hotspots, and just making sure that they have the device, the connection, a contact if they need any support with that.
So we're also passing devices out. I would say we're lucky in that most of our family members do have connectivity. They do have devices. They have multiple devices. We have a very, very small few who do not, and we're making sure we're printing things out for them and putting them on the delivery routes when the bus drivers go out to deliver lunches. So we're getting everything to the community that they need. I'm running point on devices as well. We're centrally handing those out at the board office, and they're running through me, so I get every request for device. And you know, over the course of the last couple of weeks, it's been busy, but it's really starting to die down now. Now we're dealing with just, you know, some devices are starting to break, and we have to swap them out. But we're making sure everyone gets a device, and if they have connectivity issues, which is few and far between, we're printing material out for them.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I've been reading so many stories about districts in particular who have, you know, a lot of students that don't have access, you know, to internet home, devices at home. And I think Comcast, right, they're also offering free internet to students for a particular amount of time. So it's really nice to see, I don't know, even like this, the community coming together and trying to ensure that students have the equitable access. Dave, are you jumping in or am I continuing?
All right, I can absolutely. If you hear some yelling, screaming in the background, that's I'm sure you'll all understand. So let's go to question number 7 here. How are you keeping staff connected? Dina?
So I kind of think we addressed that earlier, and some people I noticed were saying it in the chat. I know our chief academic officer sends out a daily like update with a quick questionnaire so we can kind of see how teachers are feeling and see what support they need. She's really great about putting a funny anecdote about what happens with her and her kids and getting people to share little videos about what they're doing at home as well. On a school level, principals are holding whether full faculty meetings or grade level meetings. From a supervisory level, we're reaching out, individually to connect with grade levels or different buildings. So I think a lot of different ways. It just depends. Social media, our teachers are really posting and, sharing all the wonderful things that they're doing so we can see that if we haven't connected with them.
Yeah, do you think that you mentioned social, professional, do you think they're connecting more than they would be if they were brick and mortar?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I think we ask, how are you doing, a little bit more than just kind of coming and getting right to, maybe the learning aspect or, something with a meeting, getting right into discussion about, children's academics. Maybe it's like, how are you doing? Everything okay first? And just seeing that, everyone's staying sane,
Right.
because again, we're also trying to teach children and our own children at home too. So we have to take that into consideration.
Yeah, absolutely. Michael, what about for you?
Yeah, so I agree with a lot of what Dina was saying. We have staff members actually creating their own videos, with some snippets of the school community. Obviously, through their virtual community, they're creating their own videos and sending it out to the school, posting it on social media. The principals are also, many of them were up and running with, I'll call them, virtual morning meetings within their building. So they would simulcast to every classroom, and they would have students run it kind of like a news program where they do weather and news and birthdays and all of that. And now they're doing it on video. I just participated, one of the schools reached out to me and said, hey, would you mind doing a cameo for our video for this Friday? So she included me as a recording to send out to her school. So the staff are staying connected in that way. They are staying connected with, again, as I mentioned, with our district initiatives. I pulled them together. The principals are reaching out to them daily, even if it's just for 15 or 20 minutes just to check in. They're all jumping on a call, and they've set schedules up. They're online with kids between 9 and 1. So a lot of principals are saying, okay, hey, at 1:15, let's just jump on for a quick 15-minute every day and touch base. And that not only keeps people connected, staff members connected, it also, it informs us. It kind of comes up the chain to us with some challenges they're having, and those sorts of things that we can then go out on a broad level and answer those questions through the superintendent.
Yeah, personal connection just sort of becoming this forefront priority. I wonder what kind of staying power that will have, coming back once this is sort of all over. I wonder if we'll maintain that and how that might change how we, change teaching and learning. I wonder. So, yep.
And I want to say too that a lot of people are also chatting in some things that they're doing just to help them, like the morning messages are uniting them, and the one-on-one meetings that they're having in Google Meets. But they're also talking about a happy hour. And sometimes you need to have that, right? And kind of make it a little less formal, and it really can bring a group of teachers together. So I love that idea.
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of jumped past question 8. I'm wanting to keep this to about an hour. And I think that we're primed to kind of give this some thought, and we can open up for a little bit of question and answer right after this. But I'd love to know, Dina and Michael, at just a very high level, what is your gut telling you? How is this going to change education moving forward?
I think in a few different ways. If a district wasn't prepared technologically, if that's a word, they're going to have to be, I think, moving forward. I think we will be required to have distance learning plans, at least for a short period of time. If something like this, if it could happen now, it could happen again. So I think that we'll have to consider that, again, from a higher level perspective. I think it's changing the way that people do see education. So I think that's a positive, because unfortunately we only see the negatives of education half the time. We don't really see all the positive things and all the things, the wonderful things that teachers do. You hear of the bad things on the news. So now that, we're coming together as communities and doing all these school spirits and tweeting out all these wonderful things of bringing communities together, I think there'll be different appreciations for education. At least I like to hope so. But I think that we'll be required to have plans in place from a district level, as well as really looking that we're prepared technology-wise. Because I know that some districts, we're fortunate enough, again, like I said, we transitioned 6 years ago, 1-to-1. So in that respect, we were pretty much covered. I know there's a lot of places that still aren't and are relying on personal devices, which if parents are home, they're working, they're on that personal device.
Yeah, great ideas. Thank you, Dina. And Michael, what do you think?
So I touched on this before. I think, if we are going to be required to have these plans, which I agree with Dina, I think we will. We were all scrambling to create these plans and, at the 11th hour. But related to that, if we are going to deliver instruction virtually, or more so than we ever have, which we are right now, again, we need to make the shift, and that shift has been out there. This is not a new concept, right? The concept of, we call it 20% time in our district, because that's what Google calls it. Passion projects, Genius Hour, they're all synonymous, right? I think we need to think about how those types of activities fit into our standards and curriculum, so our students can demonstrate that they can understand or learn these concepts, these new concepts that are required. But also, it's not all about just memorizing facts and spitting them out. It's about problem solving. It's about perseverance. It's about design thinking. Really showing empathy for your end user. And these are things that companies now are looking for, right? That's not what they were looking for when Ford was building cars and you were on the assembly line and you put this, you use this box of bolts and you put it on that screw. Those days are over. So, education needs to change, and that conversation has been going on for a long time, but I think this is now making it a reality and helping us realize that, I think we do need to change, because, shy of Googling answers on a test so I can get a 100 on it is that's not going to be the best way that we go.
Just so everyone knows, everyone's kind of typing in their Twitter handle for everyone to follow each other if you'd like. But Kevin actually had a really good question. He wanted to know what everyone is doing to support SEL needs for students and staff, and especially, is there something in place if a family does experience a loss with this?
So I know our guidance counselors are doing daily activities. They're available as well online. They might still be working with groups of students that they worked with during when we were in the school buildings. We also partner with Rutgers Path in our district, so that resource is still available, has been shared. I know teachers are also doing, like I was saying, it's not only about just the academic piece when they're connecting with with the kids because, we also do in our curriculum focus on that SEL piece. So I think it's all interconnected with everything.
Yeah, very similar. We work with the Rutgers SECD committee, and they helped us kind of frame some pillars out, to push out to our entire district. So those activities continue through the counselors. But in addition to that, and, in a more immediate response, we also set up a hotline, a mental health hotline that actually, thank God she agreed to it. One of our general education psychologists goes right to her cell phone. So if anyone, a student calls that number, we found a need to have that because when they were in school, they had that ability to reach out to a trusted person and someone who was confidential in the event that they had a need to speak with someone related to any kind of mental health issue. So we set up the hotline through our tech department. They routed that directly to our gen ed psychologist's cell phone. Thankfully, it has not rung yet. But if it were to ring, we have a point person, and then she could either deal with it or farm it out to where it needs to be. So that was something that we kind of thought, right before we closed, we're like, oh wow, you know what, we have so many places for our kids to talk to counselors and psychologists, but now that we're going to be home, we need to fill that gap. So we did it that way.
And just to let everybody know that I think this week, the Adventum podcast will have a mental health expert guest on, the lead mental health literacy project manager for the Alberta province, joins me in an interview. It's just in post-production right now. So just be on the lookout for that. He's got a lot of great advice. He's got just a way to conceptualize what's going on, also how to build a plan, how to do what Michael just said, how to think about that. How do we, we know what to do when we're in person, how do we now do that in a virtual environment? So I'm going to kind of wrap up the, sort of formal panel questions. I want to thank Michael and Dina for just all the great insights, the great conversations, the great things you're doing. It gave me a lot to think about. I'm sure everyone else who's listening in feels the same way. So I'm going to sort of sign off, hand it over to Lindsay. Do you have more questions you want to cover, or do we want to jump to some resources?
I do actually have one question that popped up.
Okay.
That the New Jersey team actually brought up before earlier. So thanks, Kevin. But is anyone planning on any additional learning during the summer?
Yes, we're discussing it. We're trying to figure out what that will look like, depending upon where we're at with everything. So we're possibly, normally we invite kids that are struggling. We don't know if we want to change that, and how do we maybe have like learning hubs in a sense where kids can sign up for classes. So we're still unsure, but we're discussing it.
Yeah, we're placing students is one of my big roles now in the springtime. And one worry I have is, you have a student in, let's say, 7th grade algebra. So, a student who's in advanced math in middle school, but need to make sure that we don't create gaps in algebra when they go to geometry in 8th grade and then to algebra 2 in high school. So, and I put it in the chat here, we're looking at a possible boot camp type activities, not necessarily required, but to kind of curate content for parents and students to say, okay, you essentially missed a traditional marking period's worth of work. That could be disastrous in a course like algebra. That becomes a building block then for algebra 2. So, while we may not realize that gap in our pre-K through 8 district, when they get to the high school, they could have some serious gaps and really struggle in algebra 2. So, we're looking at putting together some resources for summer work. Again, not mandated, but just, hey, this is these are some ways to fill those gaps. I mean, we do that for students who are skipping grade levels anyway in math. We offer, starting in 4th grade, we offer leveling in math. So if a 3rd grader goes into 5th grade math, they will never see 4th grade math. So we already have pieces in place to fill those gaps. I think all of our students are going to need a similar boot camp style type activity to do over the summer.
Thank you. And we're going to hand it off to Sheila to kind of close everything out.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining today. I just wanted to share with everyone. You can see my screen.
Nope.
Okay. We'll go back and we'll do that again.
Guys, I just want to say while Sheila's pulling that up, thank you so much for participating. Dina and Michael, I so appreciate your working with you and your partnership, as well as everyone who jumped in the chat and participated and gave great ideas. I love it. So thank you. I think this was a great call.
Yes, thank you everybody for participating today. I can really tell everybody got a lot out of it since I see all the Twitter handles being exchanged in the chat box. Thank you, Dina and Michael. And if you haven't been on the DOE page, I give them credit. They finally have gotten some information together now around the COVID-19. So I'm assuming the further we go into this, there might be more and more information there for districts. And it has everything from just general information to actual resources for helping. And then, of course, we ourselves at Edmentum have resources as well for you to use. I've actually, going back to that equity, I've had a lot of districts go in as they're trying to get devices to everyone. We do have some printable packets. I know we're talking about virtual learning, but where we need it, we do have packets, worksheet bundles for those other students that maybe need the extra help, like the paper, or just struggling to have a device because of issues at their home with it.